Hello and welcome. I'm Psychic Medium Roberto, and I truly hope you're doing well today. In today's case of true crime, I'm looking at the Nicola Bulley case, and she went missing on January the 27th, 2023, so at the start of this year, and her body was discovered on February 19, 2023. And yeah, there's so much speculation going on in the media at the moment. I try to avoid as much of that information as possible. All right, so let me take a moment to focus and tune in. All right, so who was Nicola Bulley? She was Nicola Jane Bulley, and she was born on October the 12th, 1977. That gives us the 10-1-12-3-24-6. So if we look at that top line, that 10-1 is all about the company. She's a company person, entrepreneur, money orientated, quite the individual with that one outcome. But that 10-1 is all about money and finances around business. And she would definitely have an entrepreneurial type spirit. And that 12-3 in the day, when she wakes up, she is about bringing people together, connecting people. You know, we know she was dealing in the property game, and she would be bringing people to properties. Do they like them? Connecting them, sorting out their mortgage loans for them. So that we see in the 12-3, and that 24-6 from the 1977, all about family and friends. Very much a family person, family orientated, loved her kids. And I would say when we get the 22-4 and 6, that 4 is all about property. It can also be about engineering field, facts, figures. I would say Nicola would be very much meticulous, very facts-driven, facts-orientated. And she has the life path 1, which is about the individual. But as mentioned before, it includes the company mandate, it includes finances. She's a team player, even though she has the 1, and with that 28 has the gift of the gab, typical that you would see in like a sales type person. And I would say, you know, with that 4, she would have a very close-knit group of friends. And, you know, once you become a friend with the 4, you're friends for life. And she would be definitely the type of person wanting to have fun with those 6s. Lots of friendliness and outgoing. Now, there were reports about alcohol abuse, and I'll get into that a bit later, but I'll just point out we have the 5 in her name, and I've marked it there in red, as well as the 5 in the Bulley. And that's where the addiction elements would sit. But what really draw my attention is I wouldn't say she was a addict per se or a heavy drinker. She might have just been going through a situation, but I would say overall she's definitely not an addictive type person, not by any long shot at all. She doesn't have the 5s prominent in her date of birth, so that would tell me that you know, she might have just gone through a patch of drinking. And we know there was an incident during January, which I'll get into. And then her life partner for 12 years was with Paul Ansell. And he was 44 at the time with the outcome 8. Now, I couldn't find all his details, but I did find on his company registered details that he was also born in October 1978. So I just put that partial outlay there. And we will see later that the double 7s from the 1978 is going to play a role, as well as the 10-1. And so not having all his details, I just expanded his name. And the Paul gives us the 5, and the Ansell gives us a 6. So also a bit of an entrepreneur, this gentleman. But I would just say, you know, having that 5 in the name from the full name is also problematic for me. And as well as if we look at the two characters of the name and last name, the outcome is a 14-5 at the top there. And, you know, with the full name, Paul Ansell has the outcome 11-2. Now, when you're having numbers such as 5s and 11-2s together, and, you know, that for me raises small alarm bells. And, you know, having done a check on his company profiles, he had 2 companies prior, and one of them was severely in debt. It had a deficit of £8 million, which is quite large. And but he has since Paul had actually registered a new company with Nicola at the end of 2022. And I did read a report about financial difficulties, and I'm definitely going to point that out during the days leading up to and the days around the disappearance of Nicola. And, you know, before we move on, I must just say, you know, to lose a life of a mother of 2, of course, will be severely devastating for the children now and later. And, you know, so we will be a little bit sensitive around this. But, you know, if I look at Nicola, well-rounded person, she was in control of who she was, very much knew who she was, well protected within herself, very well-rounded person. You know, if I look at her date of birth and her outcome of her name, which is a 12-3, this woman was in control of who she was. You know, she definitely was. And with the outcome age 45, which is a 9, she was in a very good space, I would say, during this time. And she would be actually, had she not passed away in 2023, she would be approaching what I believe would be her life path number 10-1. You know, when she turned 46, it would have been a 10-1. So she was definitely on the way of who she was, what she was doing. She was coming into her own. And I strongly believe now that I'm looking at this again, that there were some issues between Nicola and Paul. I believe their relationship was a bit rocky during this time. Hey? So, all right, so let's bring in the main slide. All right, so I've laid out 3 sequences of numbers. On the top, there is a widely reported the day of domestic incident, January 10, 2023. Now, police were called out, or welfare was called out because of a alcohol issue with Nicola. And then the second row is the day that she disappeared, and I also laid out the 2 days after. And then at the bottom we have the time frame in which her body was discovered. Okay. Now, if we look at the day that she went missing, January 27, 2023, we have the 1, we have the 27, 9, and 7, with a 10, 1, 7, 17, 8. Now, the first thing that strikes me as peculiar with this day is the lack of presence of water. All right. So on the day that she went missing, even the 2 days after, there is a lack of water. Now, water would be indicated with the number 2. So if you look at the bottom right there, the day that she was discovered, February 19, 2023, we see the number 2, water. Okay, so she was discovered in water. We see the 19-10-1 on February 19, which pings directly on Nicola with a 10-1, okay? And with the outcome of the discovery day, a 1. So that pings directly, of course, on Nicola, okay? So we see pretty obvious on the day that she was discovered. Nicola was discovered in water, trapped in water with the 7s. All right, so let's go back to January 27, 2023. Now, let's look at the money side of the situation. There is a 1 and there is a 10-1. And I believe this was the motive for her missing or finding herself in this situation. 1 and 10-1 is all about financial or business control or financial issues around a business. Okay. Now, what concerns me is that 27-9. For me, that is about murder. There was a hit placed on Nicola. So in other words, there were people on the way to come take out Nicola, is my opinion. Now, what also bothers me, quite frankly, is the double sevens. And we note that Paul also has the double sevens on the year that he was born. So ever present during this month and the whole year, in fact, with 2023 being a 7 outcome. So we could argue that, yes, there was an impact on him, but in my opinion, I believe Paul knew more than what he was letting up. Okay, so we have the 10, 1, and 7, which gives us the 17-8 outcome. I believe that Nicola was kidnapped or abducted on that day, and we see her present in the following morning, the 28, 10, 1. Yes, so it could mean the news was out. When everyone woke up that morning, the news was out that Nicola was missing. But in my opinion, I don't believe she died on January 27. There may have been a team out to kidnap and abduct her, but she certainly, in my opinion, did not die on January 27, 2023. Now, when we look at January 28, still, we see no evidence of water, and we also see that the outcome of that day was an 18-9. Now, during that day, I believe there were she was being held for ransom. The negotiation was happening 11-2. Now remember, Paul also has the 11-2 outcome of his name and last name, 11-2. And with the outcome, the threat of murder, 18-9. Still a threat of murder, not the murder, 18-9. Then we go to January 29. Again, I've put there, no evidence of water. The negotiations were still going on that morning, and 12-3 tells me someone took control of the situation, whoever these kidnappers were, and decided to end her life. So I believe actually that Nicola would have died on January 29, 2023. At the end of that day, she had been murdered, and I made a note there, murdered at crime scene 1. And I believe where the body was found in the river there, the water, that would be crime scene number 2. But I believe she was not murdered at the park or at the river or inside the river on that day. She was away from there, and only later would be put in the water. Okay, that's my opinion. So that when we look on February the 19th, when she's discovered, there's the 2. 19-10-1, Nicola. 7, impact on Paul. 12-3, I believe the issues were all about control. There was a control issue going on, and I believe the control issue was going on between Paul and Nicola, with the outcome of a 19-1. Now, it's quite ironic that the day that she's discovered pings directly on 2 days after the missing alert, and I believe January 29 was the day that she was actually murdered by the kidnappers. So if I expand the days out, so I'm going to bring in another slide here. If we expand the days out leading up to the missing person alert, and if we look on January 20, 2023, we have the 1, money, 22, high emotions, plus the 7, which gives us the 21-3, 7 with an outcome 10-1. Whatever decisions were made on that day were about murder, 21-3, with the outcome 10-1. There was something going on here about finances, about the company finances, and there was desperation in trying to resolve, how are we going to resolve this issue with the finances? And so a plan was hatched. We see January 21, we have the 21-3, so that plan was carried on through to the next day. And we see the 4 and the 7. That 4 is Nicola, and the 7 is Paul, with the outcome 11-2. So a decision was made that was going to break the law. Okay? A decision was made between Paul and Nicola about a law that was going to be broken. And we follow the lead up all the way to January 27, where, and I know this is going to sound far-fetched, but I believe this was a planned kidnapping abduction, or let's put it this way. It started out as a controlled, planned exercise, and by January the 28th, things were falling apart. Either Paul wasn't going to give in to get the money, or something went wrong. Now, this reminds me of that movie, the movie Gone, Baby Gone. Do you guys remember that movie, Gone, Baby Gone, with Morgan Freeman, Ed Harris, Casey Affleck, where the mother screamed that her daughter had been kidnapped. Meanwhile, she was in on it, but things went very wrong. And so the outcome is that the mother was found guilty of trying to kidnap her daughter for ransom and get the money. So when I was looking at this case, I was kept getting pinged on this movie. So when I started looking at the numbers, I kept on getting a sense of a planned situation that went out of control and did not have the desired outcome that was intended. Now, I know this sounds far-fetched. However, something is not adding up here for me. One thing I know for sure, and I want to tread lightly here, one thing is for sure, Nicola did not die in water. Nicola definitely did not die in water. So, there is definitely foul play involved here, and that's why I used the sub-brand of true crime for this episode. There was definitely a crime committed. This was not an accident or a trip and fall into the water by any means, but I believe this was a planned event that went horribly wrong, with the sad outcome of Nicola dying. And of course, the people that are going to suffer the most here are the two children. When they're going to grow up without their mother, without their parent. But I'm telling you now, something was planned around the situation, and something went horribly wrong. And I kept on getting pinged on that movie, Gone, Baby Gone. Something went horribly wrong here. So that when Nicola was discovered, we see her in water. I'm going to leave it at this because I believe a plan was made around the situation, and it had everything to do with money, finances, and about the business. And that something went horribly wrong, that on January the 28th, with that 11-2, a decision was made not to pay or continue with the plan. And whoever the abductees were or kidnappers then threatened Nicola's life, and then she was murdered on January the 29th, 2023. By the end of the 29th, Nicola was deceased, which means her body would have been placed sometime later in that river. And I must say, there's a lot of days that ping on each other. For example, the January 10, 2023, we see the 11/27/89. We see that same sequence on the day after of her disappearance. And we see that same sequence the day before she was discovered. There was definitely manipulation and games going on here, more than perhaps Paul is going to let up. But I do believe he was involved in some way or form, as well as Nicola, with a third party, and things got out of hand. Things got out of hand. So it would be interesting to find out if Nicola had quite a substantial life policy, or if there was a life policy within the business structure. But I'm definitely picking up that something was amiss here, and it's not as straightforward as everyone thinks. And I believe there were things happening in the background that we are not privy to. But I can certainly tell you now, without a shadow of a doubt, she was not murdered or died in water. Definitely not. So these are one of these cases that is going to be like an onion. We're going to peel away until there's lots of information coming out here. And I do believe Paul was involved, and as well as Nicola involved in some way or form with the outcome of her death, accidental death in a way. But I do believe there was something else going on here. Now, when this case initially broke, I was going to look at it. I briefly looked at it, and I just had a sense something was off here. And not so much off that her husband was involved and murdered her, not that at all. There was something else going on here. There was another big role player in the background, and I believe it had to do with something of the company, finances, business. And when I looked at it again 2 days ago, because there's been a lot of noise made on the internet about this case, so I thought, let me look at it properly and in depth. And I can tell you now, I had that same feeling that there's something going on here that we are not aware of, that has been kept secret from us. And I believe that it was being kept secret from Paul and Nicola's point of view. But I definitely believe something underhanded was going on here. And it's not a straightforward missing person fell in the river situation. There was something else going on here about money and the business. So I believe there is a third party that is aware or involved with this situation. And I believe Paul is aware of who that third party is. All right, so I'll be keeping my eye on the news, keeping my eye on the case, and see if there's any developing stories. And I'll just keep an eye on it. But I'm going to leave it here for now. But I'm definitely feeling that there was something else going on here. And guarantee that Nicola did not die as a result of being in water. All right, let me know what your thoughts are. And I'd love to see your comments. If you haven't subscribed, please hit the subscribe button, hit the notification icon for future uploads. And I would just say stay safe, stay alert, and I'll see you in the next one.